is traveling back from Spain or Paris or something like that.
Oh, look at that! I showed up as a miracle.
Well, I did text you.
So I have no text alerts, so I don't get text. I mean, I get text, but it doesn't like pop up.
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 5:33. Starting with roll call. Colin Harvey here.
Emily Dorn here.
Ryan Ryder here.
Barry Delcambry here.
Moving to public comments. Anyone in the room or anyone online for items not on the agenda?
No public comments.
Excellent. Okay. Next is discussion of possible action on the minutes from the April 21st RCDC meeting.
Being a person with obsessive compulsive disorder, I picked up some typos. I will give those to Michaela and will not spend your time going over them.
Thank you. It's like I was given a gift.
And with that, I will, with allowing me to give a couple of typos to Michaela, I move approval.
All right. Do I have a second? Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Okay. Next item is number 3, which is discussion, update, and possible action on the RCDC Commercial Concepts Working Group. So we had our first meeting.
Who is the group?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me who's the group?
Yeah, the group is Ryan Clinton, is our city administrator, Alan, Rachel Tice, Barry to my right, Emily to my right, Kevin Glasheen, and me. And there's absolutely, there were some others asked that declined, and there's absolutely nothing preventing anyone who wants to join and participate. This is
All right, so it's an open committee.
It is an open committee.
All right.
So we spent time with some of our neighbors that also happen to own and run Riverside, which is a prominent development firm here in town. And the entire purpose of the meeting was for us to get more grounded in sort of the mindset of like where a developer is coming from, but somebody that doesn't have skin in the game as it relates to the Rollingwood Plaza area. I think we learned a lot. It also helped kind of level set people coming from different perspectives. And I think it went very well. The next step is we've got a meeting June 6th, replacing the folks that were helping us from Riverside with Travis, and I always mess up his last name, Holler. Travis Holler, who is basically running point for the two owners of Rollingwood Plaza. And the purpose of that discussion is to start off a brainstorming discussion of, basically starting with our comprehensive plan. Can we get to yes somehow? They've got a long, horizon. It's going to take another probably year or so for commercial development to even be, interesting and profitable. And that's probably how long it will take for us to get through some concepts and some of the challenges it might take to get a project done. So that's just sort of progressing, and like I said, an open group that if people are passionate about it as they hear more and we start to do more with it, that'll be great to have them be a part of it. Barry, I don't know, would you add anything?
No, I mean, I think we spent about an hour and a half with them. I think the only thing that was the takeaway to me was we had a good diverse group, like we expanded, but the limitations really of it that I hadn't thought about from a developer standpoint, the limitations of the space and current code, but just in general, because it's what looks like a huge parcel to me is actually quite small from a developmental footprint. So how do you make that into something that is attractive, or the flip side is like that is it? I mean, that's what I took away.
I presume it's profitable at this point in time, so the question becomes, is redevelopment, putting new money in, being downtime for a year and a half or 2 years of construction worthwhile on a longer term basis?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at. I mean, it's like there's two routes, right? There's a way to make it probably much nicer, or even if they redevelop from our brief conversation, and this is not set in stone, like the overall vision may not be much different than what's there other than aesthetics. Just from a redevelopment standpoint. So it's a matter of which way do you go. You have like really two routes. You can make a nice facade and like really you're stuck with the same situation, or you do something else, but really I don't think there's a middle ground. but we're not there, we're not moving far enough along to really, I mean, this is just my thoughts.
Yeah.
We're in no way making decisions at all, but it was informative, at least nothing else, just to think about it in a way of like, well, this is what it cost and this is what others have done in similar spaces, and learning more about the process of how to build things, and it was informative. So I would encourage anyone that wants to come to it, because that group we met with, and then I'm sure the subsequent meetings will be very informative just in general.
I can't come and Barry can't come and then David can't come because with the three of you on the committee, one of us there would make it a quorum.
Oh, well, I mean, if we need to, like, I'm happy to, like, rotate out, like, rotate a group so that we don't have that. So if you wanna go, and
That's fine.
I was at this one, if you wanted to come, Ryan, for the next one, I'm happy to, like, step aside and let you come through. It doesn't.
I mean, to your point, Barry, of like, I mean, we're one meeting into a process. We're just trying to take people through. I think that in the next, in the fall, when hopefully we start to have some visual concepts of what the art of the possible is, I think that's probably when, people would be spending a good use of their time.
My question, I guess I'm jumping to part of what you got for item number 4, Colin, is are they asking for our input? Are we volunteering this? Or where is the impetus come from for our participation?
As it relates to Rollingwood Plaza?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
The Rollingwood Center project.
Yeah. It's a great question, because that was one of the questions that Jeremy and Barrett from Riverside asked us, just like, because they said it is a little bit unusual. Like, ordinarily you kind of sit here as a body like this and wait for a developer to come propose a project and then try and facilitate and work with them and work with council and so forth and so on. One of the biggest challenges has kind of been we haven't necessarily put forth the we're open for business type of relationship. So it took a little bit of reaching out to them, which we've done over the course of like the last year and a half, where we've had a couple of different ad hoc meetings, and then continue to progress things. But then, as we told them we were putting this working group together, I met with Travis and had another conversation right before we started, and this was the first time I got the impression that they had a really strong desire to do something like that. And I think it's probably two fundamental drivers. One is when it comes to, yes, that thing cash flows like crazy, it's paid for, and it's got a wait list 20 people long. But it has got some significant issues from an infrastructure perspective, from an HVAC perspective, from a flooding standpoint. All of those things are problematic. And so at some point they're going to have to make a decision of, do you do something that takes care of all that infrastructure thing and slightly improves cosmetic issues, or do you do something big? And that's where he also kind of alluded to, I don't know how much weight there is to this, but he said based on the kind of the two brothers that own the land, like where they are kind of in their business career is they're starting to think a lot more about legacy, and that property is meaningful to them. It was one of the first ones that they bought, and of course they built out, now they own hundreds of things that kind of look like that. They have a real desire to do something and leave something behind that's pretty impressive and pretty cool. So that would kind of is the first time I felt a little bit of a pull from them, as opposed to just us really wishing somebody would do something better than the 1978 parking lot. I do think now, and this is one of the things we talked a lot about on Friday, is there is a certain amount of this that we can't control or push. We have to be like, what would you understand our constraints. What would you like to do, and what sort of creative ideas do you have, to meet us somewhere that we think, that the neighborhood would be okay with. And so that's kind of where we are right now. So it's going to be a little bit of a switching back over to them a little bit, and then if they have some good ideas, then I think that's where we start to really draw some conceptual diagrams, get a broader audience involved, and see what we can do. And I think we should fully understand and expect one outcome is we can't get to something that we can agree upon. That they want to do something too big.
They can always just come and, as you said, do the regular approach of do their own plans and approach the building inspectors and the council and the planning and zoning commission and do their thing that way, they don't need us, absolutely, but if there's a way we could improve the project, fine.
Yeah.
Where are we with the retail coach that we had on retainer for a couple of years, if I recall?
Yeah.
We did not renew
We didn't
work with
renew
them.
the contract.
Okay, did they leave us with any
Yes.
real guidance?
They left us with all the deliverables. We have all
Yeah.
their analysis, all their outputs, all that stuff
Yeah.
saved on, where is it? I know it's somewhere. Because
Yeah,
we had it,
we
I have the link. I just can't remember exactly where it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have all that, but we just kind of felt like, you know, in the absence of pulling off, you know, something meaningful like Rolling Wood Plaza, there's not much else he can do. He wasn't doing anything to help make that happen.
What is the other place that could use some refreshing, it seems to me, is the place that has the, is it Salvation Army or whatever it is there?
Goodwill.
And the cleaners, which is where I get my shirts done, you know, I don't wanna kick them
You wanna
out,
kick
because
out
I might
cleaners?
might have to learn how to iron again.
The time.
But, I mean, that place seems to me to be also a diamond in the much rougher.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they also specifically mentioned in that meeting was the fact that, and we've gone through this now as a city, going through the work on MOPAC and everything else, is that Bee Cave is a TxDOT thoroughfare. And so that's our biggest challenge, is the fact that it's looked as just an artery. Like, it's not really a lot of traffic, yes, but it's not a sit down and like kind of go, like sit down and, you know, hang out kind of space. Like, I mean, he brought up in the meeting, specifically, like, do you want to really sit down and have a nice, like, you know, bistro experience while cars are going like 45 miles an hour on 4 lanes? So like, that's also something to work through. And that, the same thing to your point, like, the reason it looks like that is that there's a demand side and a supply side, right? And I think, again, coming back to what I said earlier, that was one of the biggest takeaways I had, was from a developer standpoint, like, in the art of possible, we have to like be realistic, but also understand like what we're dealing with. And I think, I mean, there's probably financial reasons, and there is legacy reasons why that area hasn't been developed. I mean, that's, if I remember correctly from Retail Coach, there's like 10 or 11 parcels there, most of which are owned by out of state or trust. And so there's also, no one has cobbled that together yet to make it something that is financially feasible. But again,
But my recollection from what I heard from Retail Coach was that actually the city owns that property behind there.
correct.
Yeah.
And that gives us something to toss into the mix if we were wanting to do that. Now,
Yeah.
I think the mayor lives on that cul-de-sac, and he may not want parking over there or whatever could develop, or I suppose we could do.
So does me. Yeah.
You know, but
So
to me, that's
I mean,
more of a development opportunity, but like you said, if it's parceled up with a whole bunch of people that are not coordinated, then who knows what we can do.
They did, as it relates to this topic, that they did confirm an assumption that we had, which was, if you can get a really nice project done in Rollywood Plaza, then and especially as, you know, economic circumstances change, you're definitely going to have people more comfortable with exploring things like snapping up some of those disparate lots and creating a singular lot that they can develop something more, you know, reasonable on. So it's so hard to do anything. It's so weird. Parking's weird. All that stuff's crazy. But there's like, no one's going to take that kind of risk, because all those places have the same characteristics of Rollywood Plaza. They're all cash flowing. They're all paid for. But what makes it worse is no single one of them is really big enough to do anything, and they're like 17 different owners. So I think that was sort of their perspective. It's like, if we were you, we would run really hard at this to see if you can get something real done, and that would start to change, you know, a little bit of the, you know, inertia, if you will, or of getting something like that done.
All the trash cans out front of the Goodwill is not
Yes.
Salvation Army.
Yeah,
All the trash
Goodwill.
cans out in front of Goodwill are not a good sight.
well, those are donation boxes. They're not trash cans. It's slightly different.
Right.
Where's the line between the donations and the trash?
But based on what I've seen some people do, and they're just like, I'm gonna get
They
this.
don't accept
Kind of
what's
a blurry
fine.
line, I
Yeah.
think, from my observation.
Okay, so
All right.
anyway, so that's the update on that. As it relates to item number 4, okay, so I guess it's been 2 meetings ago now. We basically said, hey, while we've got this, longer political process in play, we have a significant budget that we can be doing things that are also in alignment with our mandate, in partnership with parks, and and just the residents in general. And we listed several things. Some included the parking. Some include this is including but not limited to the field house and potential options for basically extending its usage for multiple different things. The quality of the back ball fields. There was some stuff done on the WAC entrance, some of the residential Rollingwood entry points. Anyway, we're at a point now, and we had some citizens that have been helping us get concepts of this, so that we could even kind of consider it. Where we are right now is for us to be able to really take a look at these and weigh in on them and be able to vote on them in here, vote on them in parks, send them to eventually to council. The delta between what somebody can kind of do, cutting and pasting on their own versus getting some professional drawings done that we can actually look at. We're at that point right now. We've done some initial estimates, and it's probably going to be between 1,500 and 3,000 to mock these things up in a way. It's not only for the purposes of conveying the concept more clearly, it is also to have enough detail that we can get rough order of magnitude pricing, so we have an idea of how much is this whole thing. Is it a matter of phasing? Is it a matter of some things just need to be deprioritized? And we have and have for the last couple of years had a line item in here for park amenities and promotion for $3,000.
That was my wild and crazy idea of having a coffee service there in the fall when it's cold enough to want hot coffee, and I never was able to get a coffee vendor interested in coming over and doing it.
So this is another version of park amenities and promotion.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I would, and I don't think there's any issue with doing it, but I would like to put forth a motion to leverage that 3,000 to start to articulate these different projects over the summer, so that we come into the fall and we can start to collaborate on them and see, what can we move forward.
I'm fine with that.
So I second.
I'm fine with the idea. Can I engage our legal counsel are you playing video games over there?
No, I've been listening.
Would you go quickly over, because my information, I was one of the founders of this organization about 25 years ago, and then went off of it for a good while. I was back in the old chapter 504 and 505 days, A and B corporations and all that, which I think a lot has changed. What do we need to do what does this board need to do to adopt a project and get it so that we can spend money on something like this? Give us Ned in the first reader.
Yeah, it depends on the project. If it is generally a project that you determine promotes and expands new and business enterprises, you just approve the project, approve the amount, then that has to go to city council. City council has to approve the project and approve the amount. You have to have findings that it promotes new and expanded business enterprises. There's various other types of projects that need different findings. There's a provision that authorizes expenditures for improvements for parks. So you have to have the proper findings and such. Capital improvement projects also have to promote new and expanded business enterprise. So it just depends on what you want to spend the money on. The first step is just verifying that it falls within one of the authorized projects under the statute.
Yep.
And then once we do that, then usually have to have a public hearing, and city council has to approve any expenditures.
There used to be a publication requirement. Is that long gone now?
No, there's no publication requirement other than your typical publication requirements.
Which is the
agenda,
website and the
agenda,
calendar.
yeah, 72 hours in advance.
We used to have to publish 60 days in the Westlake Picayune.
Well, it's gonna depend on whether or not that project has been authorized previously or not. So there is a provision in the statute that says before you have any expenditures, you have to wait 60 days, but that's not a public notice requirement, that's a waiting requirement before you can spend funds. And it just completely depends on the project.
So we have to define a project first, I would presume, and a budget.
Yes,
And then we'd have to have a hearing on it?
yes, usually.
Okay,
Depends.
Which we could then do at this, just the 15 minutes before the next meeting. I presume we can stack those, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, we can sort out the process. It really depends on what the project is.
So to just in the same vein, when excuse me, when we proposed the agenda 2 months ago to consider this family of projects, we did at a mid-level go through with Stan, the attorney who's with us most often, just to make sure we weren't wasting our time. And it was basically a combination of most of these things either, promoted, traffic, into in here, promoted security, security and safety, and then just, general beautification that just reinforces the, the number of people coming in here. Now, we did expect that once we got down to, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 things proposed. It's very inexpensive, like I said, with the $2 to $3 grand to draw really good pictures of each one of these things, and then start to compartmentalize, like, what is the project, and then make sure each one of those projects at a detailed level makes that. So I feel like there's probably 2 passes. There's the first pass that said, hey, generally these look like they're in the right spot to do a little more due diligence and get some pictures. And then as we parse them out into the individual projects themselves, they would have to go through exactly what you described. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, and the reason I'm not trying to be vague, but it truly depends on the project. So let me just read you one section of the statute. Except as provided by subsection B, a Type E corporation shall hold at least one public hearing on the proposed project before spending money to undertake the project. But then section B says, a Type E corporation, the creation of which was authorized by a municipality with a population of less than 20,000, that's us, is not required to hold a public hearing under this section if the proposed project is defined by subchapter C, chapter 501. So whether or not we have to hold a public hearing, whether or not we have to wait the 60 days, it's always going to be dependent upon the specific project that you have in mind. So that's why I can't give you any very specific process and procedures.
No, that makes, and I think that's why Stan probably stopped at that point as well. He was like, okay, you don't have anything on here that automatically makes me go, that's out of line.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, go down to that next level, and then decide what you guys really want to do, and then start to drill down on those projects and make sure they.
That's exactly right.
And that gets us to number 5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing we did get a second, but we did not.
No, I just meant like that's how we got to number 5. Like,
Yes.
Oh.
it's the same
Yeah.
process.
Correct.
That's all I meant. We went through that process that
Yes.
was just described and got to number 5.
And got to number 5.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Just an example. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Alex Robinette. I just wanted to also ask some process questions because you were talking about pricing. I don't know if you mean the $3,000 for all of those projects you listed, because I could see a situation where just that amount might be spent on the field house alone, depending on who you hire. And I also have a question regarding what do you have drawn? Do you need to get public input prior to drawing things? Because I know that Little League and girls softball have asked to be brought into the conversation about the building and just all of that. So I'm just not sure what the next step is. I've certainly, I have some names I can give you of people that can do the renderings, but I'm not sure how far along this is or if it really needs to start at Parks. So I don't know.
Parks would take the lead for that. I mean, we are funding a Parks project, but ultimately the Parks group would take the lead, I would think. I mean, this is a very early stage before you would bring in the entire community, I would think. We're literally just trying to provide capital, like cash.
Okay.
But that's our job. I mean, our job is to provide money to help grow things in the community, not to execute really any decision at all. That goes to council.
Gotcha. Okay.
But should we define a project more broadly for just plans for the parks and throw a bigger number out there as being something that we could fund with the parameters that we'd have to approve each project? I'm trying to enlarge the scope without losing total control over it, and I don't know quite how to do that.
I don't need, well,
No, 3,000 is not gonna go a long way.
I think we should take a look at, let's start there, and before, and get a better feel for it.
Isn't the one thing I think we have defined, and last meeting, we had some drawings of improvements of the area right here behind the concession stand.
Yep.
And it seems to me that's something we could proceed relatively quickly on.
Yeah, I think that's another good point. Alex, back to your point, is I think there probably are some things in the list of projects, Fieldhouse being one of them, that are more complicated and require something of that level, and then maybe a couple that potentially don't.
Yeah,
that being the case.
Do we or do we not do the security camera thing? I mean, that seems to me to be a relatively finite project that we can put our hands around and either authorize or not without a whole lot of input. Redoing the concession stand, for what uses, for what groups, it's just a much more amorphous kind of project. It's going to
Agreed.
We're going to have to focus more before we can say what it is we want to spend and
Why?
why, and justify that to the citizens here. And improving security for the Zilker Preserve. I'm for that. What does it mean?
So I can comment on both of the ones that you have picked are two things that are down a slightly different path. So the one related to the cameras, as I understand it, is still being worked at council, and will have a point at which, if they agree that this is still a good idea, would potentially ask us to help with the funding, which I think we notionally said that would be a good thing to do. So I think we're actually waiting on council on that. We just put it down there as another place that we can.
Yeah, Phil McDuffie, City Council. We're having a presentation and going to have a discussion about it this Wednesday. It's on the agenda for this Wednesday. We're having a presentation from the main vendor, and there'll be a discussion at that time. Personally, I think defining the issues around cameras, but also, should we decide to have cameras, what do they show? How many entry points do we really have into the neighborhood? Where should those cameras be deployed? All of that sort of thing. And it's not as simple as 5 cameras.
No, but that's a council decision, not ours. So
Correct.
we're literally
Correct.
just a
Correct.
we're
Correct.
just
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
all of this is, so as I said, it's going to be discussed for the very first time in front of council
Yeah.
2 days from now.
But that's a good example of kind of what I was describing of, Brian, I do think we should be more general, because the actual discussions happen between the different, like, SMEs essentially. In our case, it's council, and it could also be parks on the other items, is we need to allocate funds or the initiative, and then the other groups that are that is their expertise then go out and define like what it is. We just need to give them the yes of, here you go, here's a check, go.
Well,
I mean, we can't.
I would, once again, one council member, one opinion, right? I would suggest each initiative has, just defining them initiative by initiative, and then they either get greenlit or whatever, and going that way, rather than having some large blank check that gets a little wishy-washy.
Well,
that
that's
type
fair.
of thing.
I meant like for instance, we allocate $20,000 to the cameras, right? But at that point, that's council's job to define the placement and use of those cameras.
Absolutely.
In the case of parks, there are 4 projects we're trying to get to do.
Right.
We know that each one has a certain allocation of funds just to get started. In
Correct.
that case, I think if we're looking at renderings and drawings, you could do it 2 ways. You can blanketly allocate those 4 items for, here are 4 projects, get renderings and drawings for X amount, or you allocate an equal amount to each one of those. And so that's 4 individual votes or whatever, but it's also easier just to, we're not making a decision, we're actually just trying to get the group started. So to me, if you.
And I could see you possibly doing it that way. However, I would think just because of the scope of actually getting projects done, that type of thing, usually, and what city staff and council and all the other moving pieces can be involved, I think, 1 or 2 projects at a time is
Good.
plenty, and much in the same way as drawing up multiple plans for several houses. I would do 1 at a time.
But you do get
and
economies
actually
of
build
scale
it up.
if you get multiple ones. I mean, right? If you engage a firm and like we have this larger area, right? I'm assuming. we would get
If that's
a-
the case, I mean, I think the diversity of the projects is such that might not be the case, but that
Okay.
might be the case. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Well, noted.
Is there Phil, before you leave, is there an
Thanks, Phil.
estimate for budgeting purposes, not that we got, what, $750,000 in the bank right now?
Correct,
Um,
roughly.
What is the camera project, if it were to happen? Do we even know? Guesstimate, is it 50, 100, is it, what is it?
I don't know. We got some preliminary numbers, but once again, we need to determine how many cameras we need, where we need them. Also, I think there's a yearly, and again, I've done
that's where I'm
little
going
to
next.
no research on this because that's what
Okay, to
the
ask
presentation's for.
legal-
But I mean, I think there's a yearly licensing fee and,
I'm
yeah.
sure, and is there, can we define the project so that it includes that licensing fee that we could pay it annually, or do we have to go through a project process each year to fund that?
Just depends on how you want to handle it.
That comes out of
Seriously.
the next meeting.
Right.
What I'm actually trying to do is figure out for these next projects how to get us to yes, to take an action to like start moving forward.
Understood.
I mean, I think there's more work to do on the cameras. Obviously, there's no ask from us yet. We started it and council's running with it. I'm now trying to allow parks or whoever wants to run with these projects to run,
So
so that we can come back with, so they
in
can come back with a
the
detailed
there a
answer.
agenda
list in
for
the-
city council,
is there a
it
list in the
says, this is an
agenda
action,
packet?
one of the items is purchase up to 5 license plate readers in the amount to not exceed 15,000.
Correct. And I at least am of an opinion that 5 won't likely be inadequate.
Right.
But
Saying
that's
really
one
inadequate.
opinion.
I think for the purposes of this meeting, we're starting to overthink it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes,
The-
exactly.
too
we,
deep.
we put it on here in the original set of like 7 or 8 things we thought we could be helpful in addition to trying to promote the Whirlingwood Plaza initiative. And then found out, to your point, Phil, that it was a little more complicated than we realized. I think everybody did, and so we just have it kind of notionally that if you guys move forward with it, we might collaborate somehow to make that happen.
Absolutely.
And we'll just wait until it happens.
And is-
Correct.
Have these cameras always been part of the thought process for use of these funds, or is this new?
This is just a
No, this
project.
is relatively new.
Yeah, it's a new project.
Yeah, this would be a new project.
I mean, it's been in the air for
And under what, like,
a year.
under what section of the code were people saying that it would fit?
Safety, security.
Well, there isn't a provision under the code for safety and security.
I don't know. Oh, that's why we have a city administrator.
Might be, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's another excellent point. We didn't even get as far as like, is it okay or not? It's just if
It is within our statutory.
There is a
Yeah.
proposal that is being made next Wednesday, or this Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that is it.
Yeah, and.
There is no
yeah,
check.
Okay, good, so I was,
Yeah.
all right, so that's when I was allegedly was gonna see it for the first time, I guess.
Correct.
Other than being here at this meeting,
Yes.
all right.
Right, so this is
Or
the
single
list of
line.
things that might become projects, and I think the board, to speak for the board, was trying to prioritize which of these things would graduate to be projects and in which order.
Yeah,
That's-
and I don't think,
If
I don't
they-
think license plate security cameras is gonna fit within a project within, for authority of a type E corporation. Off the top of my head. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
How would you ensure safety and economic development without a police force that can properly monitor people coming in and out of regular buildings?
There's not an exception, there's not a project that says ensure safety for economic development.
Okay, I mean, I think that's probably a different discussion, but I mean,
Well,
I think it's still a different, I think it's still a different discussion that has some indications that it may be a
Well,
problematic.
it's listed on here as, it's listed on here as initiative projects identified for funding, right? And so this is in the agenda packet, right? That's my understanding. And so, so let me give you the example I give all the time. So, for larger communities that have like their own fire department, folks will say, well, we want to buy a new fire truck with not with hotel tax, with type E economic development dollars. And I'm like, well, all right, let's go through the statute and let's see the specific authority to buy a fire truck. And there is none. And the argument that is made to me is, well, we have to be able to provide firefighting services in order for there to be businesses in town. I really don't think that fits within the spirit of what the Economic Development Corporation statute was adopted for. I have said, in a specific instance, where a city said, we're trying to encourage construction of economic development that goes vertical. And we do not have a fire truck with a ladder that'll go above 2 stories. And so that's something we need if we want to encourage that kind of economic development. And I went, all right, it's kind of in the gray area where I'm like, I don't have to put a bag over my head, but the governing body has to make a finding that this will promote new and expanded business, because that's what the statute says. It has to promote new or expanded business development. So if we believe that putting security cameras up within the community is going to promote new and expanded business development, in other words, our businesses don't believe it's safe to locate a business within Rollingwood because we don't have security cameras, then yeah, it's going to be a legitimate project. But those are the findings that you're going to have to make, that this body's going to have to make, and the city
Correct.
council's going to have to make.
Yeah, this is just me being honest with you. As an attorney, your job is not to tell me no, your job is to
Yeah.
tell me how.
Right. Well, actually, sometimes it is my job to tell you no. I mean, if you were to come in here and say we're not going to allow blacks in our meeting, I'm going to tell you no.
I mean,
right?
that is extreme case.
No, I mean,
And
but there are.
And in no
there are-
way did I say that.
I know that's not my point. Is that I disagree with you. Sometimes it is my job to tell you no. Now you can ignore my advice. I have clients do that all the time.
Yeah.
I can. So I do believe it's my job sometimes to tell my client no, because there are many times when I'm like, no, you should not do that. There are other times like, well, you know what? It's kind of a gray area. Case
Correct.
could come down this side, the course could come out on this side. Here's the history with respect to the legislative act. Here's what I think the outcome would be. Can't guarantee anything. Here's my best guess. Take the direction that you want. But I disagree that it's not my job to tell you no. Sometimes
Well, in 5 minutes of you
absolutely
initially
is.
saying no and not reading anything that we've done in the past 3 weeks or 3 months, you came up with a solution that was possible for us to be able to do this on the cameras. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I do think there is a possibility to shoot us down right here is not fair. I think there is a possibility for us to get this.
I'm not shooting you down, but I'm telling you in public, based on
Of
my
course.
20 some odd years of experience of working with the Economic Development Corporation, back when it was statutory, not codified, that the intent of the Economic Development Corporation Act was not to provide security cameras for general use within the community.
Now, parks
Just
are
wasn't.
parks are a different animal.
Right,
because
parks
those
are a different animal. Do we
specifically
want to put
authorized.
security cameras in the parks to make the parks safer? That's a different thing, because there's a specific provision in the code that says you can make capital improvements on parks. So that's a very
Okay, so
specific
this is-
capital improvement
Yeah.
that's part of a park. But if we're talking about putting up security cameras just generally within the community, y'all can do what you want, but I'm telling you, I don't think that's defensible.
Fair enough.
I think that's fine and great guidance for today. I don't think we have to carry it any further. Again, this was a brainstorm list of
Yep.
things that came from multiple different sources: citizens, this board, people like Alex that were doing some beautification projects with the women's club. it's an amalgamation of things that we put on this list when we came to the realization that for us to have maximum impact with the budget we have, we really needed to be thinking about things like the parks and other areas where we can put money into the community, that because the reality is we're not going to be a material part of a $50 million redevelopment, and we should probably that is going to be more a political thing than a money thing, with the exception of we may jointly pay for some conceptual diagrams when we get to the right point with that, so that the community can see it. But so at this point, and we kind of got cut off before the motion finished, but I think I had a motion and a second for approving the usage of the existing $3,000 to start some of the conceptual diagrams. It may not cover everything. That'll give us a start. We can get going and we can get a look at, like, okay, it looks like it's going to be 5,000, and we come back and say we need another 2,000 to get the rest of it done, but we don't waste another month not engaging somebody and not getting something started. So can I conclude on at least the vote for, since I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I have one question, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Over the course of the summer, who is executing this? Like, because otherwise, to your point, we will lose momentum, or at least time. So, approving dollar amount, one thing, but who is the next step? Like,
So
who is moving this forward?
So
Is Melissa and the parks people, the parks board?
well, I think I think there's some discussion with parks, and then I think there's also some discussion as well with. I think Alex had some ideas of some people we might be able to use, and I just think we need, before everybody kind of disappears,
Correct.
between us and parks, select someone to start doing this work, and then give them all the pre-work that's been done that allows this to probably be done for a lot less than it would have been had all this other work not been done, and then get them started, and then have some combination of someone from this board and someone from parks and any citizens that want to be involved, keeping an eye on progressing. That I don't think it's that hard. But that's my thought.
Who is the person?
Huh?
Who is the person?
From
Is it
here,
us? Or, like, okay.
it's us. It's us from here. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're the ones that are funding it. But there's a lot of other stakeholders like parks that we need to be collaborating with. And then ultimately, when this thing is something real, we need to then be ready to start to figure out the individual requirements of those individual projects. Public hearing, not public hearing, passes the muster,
Well,
doesn't.
this is a project, so this is technically a project, right, what you're doing here. Authorizing conceptual drawings for capital improvements, that's a project. We're gonna spend money on a project, which is, now, the initial part of that project are these conceptual drawings, right?
Right.
I think that's perfectly okay, not even a gray area. So that'll be authorized, but it's, can't be spent for 60 days, right? Gotta wait 60 days.
Okay.
To spend those dollars, and city council has to approve.
So it was already approved as a project.
As a budget line.
It was it? Oh, it was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sitting here. It's right here. In the
Yeah.
So it was previously approved through the budget
budget.
process.
Just never
Yeah.
used. That's
Got
correct.
it. No problem. Okay, sorry. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. No problems.
Okay.
No problem with doing what now?
Well, you're spending the money. As long as it's been approved in the budgetary
Yeah,
process,
these are all
as long as we've had that
approved
public hearing,
projects.
no problems.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Are we okay to vote? Or
Yep.
you
No, no.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. The motion passes. So we kind of combined 4 and 5 there. Anybody have anything else?
What is the Zilker Preserve? Is that the area where Rollingwood Drive hits Mopac, the old pistol range area?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. So there's been
All the way up to the Silver House.
Yeah, to Royal House.
Is that our park or is that
It's City of Austin.
City of Austin.
It's City of Austin.
Back to legal, sir. Can we approve
The cameras would go on our side of the property.
pardon?
The point was that the cameras were gonna go on our side.
Well, I'm not, yeah.
So there's.
If it becomes a project.
I was gonna say,
I'm all for the
Yeah, no, I
project.
understand.
I'm not
No,
arguing
no, I
about
understand.
whether I wanna do the project, I'm wondering whether it's within the scope. We're gonna improve parks, does they have to be our parks?
Yes, guys.
Now, you're being overly narrow. Come on.
Dave,
Think like a lawyer.
we have land behind that we, I mean, this is completely out of line, but there is land that running is back there that could, I mean, is that not a park? I mean, could you not put a line?
Well,
there?
that's the next question
so
is
I don't
when we,
know.
And it's open space too, it's not just parks, it's parks and open space.
Yeah, so
Well,
It's
good.
a
so
little,
when it
it's a
enters
little
that open
broader.
space, like,
Yeah.
this is what I was talking
Are
about.
you
what
talking
was possible.
Delana? What
No,
are
no,
you
he's
talking?
saying the Zilker Clubhouse area.
see, the
Oh,
open
okay.
space
Okay,
very much
okay,
might
okay.
include number
Just wondering
6,
what
create a
language.
project to develop a plan to improve green space buffer between residential and commercial spaces. That would be
Yeah,
open space.
yeah, it's open space. Fits,
that
I
one's-
think it fits squarely within the project for recreational and parks and open space use, 100%.
So I would also, just based on, from the original list that you're looking at to today, there's been initial work and discussions as it relates to that area, and I think it's kind of like the security cameras. There's just a lot more to it that I think we need to do more work before we understand kind of what's even possible. They're if Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin's redoing the clubhouse sometime soon. They're not redoing the lack of security apparatus in that area. And we also learned a little bit about this in our meeting with the developers, because we were just talking at the end of it about a bunch of different things, and they were also willing to help. So it's going to take a lot of collaboration, obviously, with the city of Austin about what's possible. In some cases, there's some suggestions on, hey, is there certain traffic we could shut down that keep people from driving back there that we do have control over, and then there's some things we have no control over. So I think there's a little bit more research and understanding what partnering with the city of Austin could look like and who could even fund it. So I think that one and the cameras are still in further research mode, and some of these other things that point at parks and open space are probably what we're going to be able to get drawn and moved forward more quickly.
I mean, I think the other ones are council, mayor, and police department.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. But when we put it down there were some things we just didn't know. We didn't know where those lines were drawn and like who could do what and
Yeah.
who was going to do what. All right.
Yeah, have y'all read that section of the statute that authorizes these public park and open space improvements? Because I think it's helpful if y'all.
Yeah, we need to get.
I mean, I can just read it to you so that it's real.
Yeah,
short.
I've read it before, but I think it'd be good for
Yeah.
everybody.
So what it says is, so again, you can only use Type B funds for a project unless it's for administrative purposes, like administering the dollars and those types of things.
Sure.
And 10% can be used for promotional purposes. Other than that, you got to find a project. And so 505.152 is a project in the local government code. Projects related to recreational and community facilities. We get to ignore that title because it lists a bunch of other things in it. For purposes of this chapter, project includes land, buildings, equipment, facilities, and improvements. I read that and I note that the word expenditure is not listed in there. The word expenditure is listed in other projects, which the courts have said means that you can spend it, it's an expenditure. But in this case, it's got to be land, buildings, equipment, facilities, or improvements, all right? It's got to be an expenditure for one of those things, all right? There's no general expenditure within the statute. And improvements found by the board of directors to be required or suitable for use for professional and amateur sports, including children's sports, athletic, entertainment, tourist, convention, and public park purposes and events, including stadiums, ballparks, auditoriums, amphitheaters, concert halls, parks and park facilities, open space improvements, museums, exhibition facilities, and related store, restaurant, concession, and automobile parking facilities, related area transportation facilities, related roads and streets and water and sewer facilities, and other related improvements that enhance any of the items described by this section. And so that's the language that we have to look to for purposes of determining whether or not the expenditure fits within the statute.
Yeah, that is helpful, and I think that's where 85% of our stuff probably
I think
lives.
it looks, from my reading, like 95% of it, yeah.
So,
My only concern is the license plate security cameras, if it's gonna be if they're gonna be placed generally throughout the community, as opposed to specifically within the park for purposes of an improvement within
Yeah.
the park.
That's good to know.
I don't want to speak for council at all, because again, they haven't even had that meeting. I don't think the intent was sporadically place it across the city. The intent, we have open areas
Yeah.
and entry points in the community that are high traffic, one being the park area, and the other spots where the beautification the city owns, like right there by the Shell station, a few other spots. I think that was the intent behind it, where it is that open area that is communal or common or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. The devil's always in the details of these
Yep.
things.
That's the how.
Okay,
That's the, anything else you need?
we done?
So,
Move
motion
to
close?
adjourn?
Close.
Second?
Second.
All right.
With your feet? Okay,
All right.
thank you.